Hello, Ken Spriggs here, and I am beginning a new model build, and it'll be a shorter one. I'm continuing on with the 2001 A Space Odyssey theme, and so I'm working on the Orion Space Clipper. And it shouldn't be too many builds, probably 3 at most, I would think, parts I mean. This kit isn't my favorite of the 2001 ships, but I do like it. Probably haven't built it in many years. I know I built it a couple times as a kid when that first came out by Aurora, and then it was re-released again in the mid-70s. So I started working on it, and I like it better than I remember it being. But I chose it for the reason that it's a fairly simple build. And after working about 5 months on my Discovery, especially towards the end when I was hurrying to get it completed for Wonderfest, I wanted to take a bit of a break. But I still want to keep working on my hobby, so I'm taking my time on this. I won't be putting a ton of extra work into it, other than I am working on the photo etch from Paragraphics, and a little bit of scratch building with some of the detail in there. Initially, I was gonna go ahead and do a similar pattern with the different gray panels, like I did on the Discovery, but after looking at the decals for the kit that came with it, they're really nice. I really like them. So I decided instead to do a like a black base kind of a thing with some dark gray, and then I'm going to paint over that with some flat white, and then end up putting the decals onto it. So, all right. So let's go ahead and take a look at the progress that I've accomplished on this kit. All right, and here is a clean workbench, work table. Cleaned everything off, put away all the pieces. It got really cluttered, as I'm sure the rest of you are used to having as well. I don't know what happens. I don't mean for it to get that way, but it just gets cluttered. So, but a brand new clean surface here. Everything in the back are things that I actually use. A few paints, 5-minute epoxy, my glues, some clamps over here. I have a couple of solo cups with things like scissors and paintbrushes, and my pull saw and things like that. My thinner over here for thinning the brushes, and tape. Of course, my sprue cutters and photo etch cutters. Handy dandy X-Acto knife, and some emery boards, which I like to use. All right, so a nice clean slate to start working on my next project. And I'm going to go ahead and continue, and as you probably saw from the title of the video, I'm going to continue my 2001 series, and I'm going to start working on the Space Clipper, the Orion Space Clipper, Pan Am Space Clipper as they call it. And I'm going to follow the same type of painting scheme that I did on the Discovery, where I'm going to paint it dark, mask off some spots, paint a lighter gray, and so on and so on, so I can get that same kind of a look that's all one color from far away, but when you get close you see different individual panels. So I'm going to be kind of inventive with that. I got a few aftermarket sets that I showed earlier in a video from Wonderfest. I got the Pan Am decals from called TV Man, and so I'll be using those on it. And I got the Paragraphics photo etch set, which I'm going to start working on as well to add some of it to it. The one thing I definitely want to do is use the cockpit, make the little cockpit there, and use the cockpit window so it's more realistic. I'm going to put together the passenger cabin, and then we'll kind of see how that goes. These are actually all the little chairs. I really don't think I want to go through and fold all these up, put all these chairs on here. But I might come up with some simple fix of like a little styrene piece or something. We'll see. You're not going to see a ton through those side windows, but we'll take a look. I haven't really put it together yet, so I really don't know if those are going to be necessary. But the cockpit for sure, and then the other parts that go around that I'm going to be using. All right, so let's go ahead and get started on that, and let's see what we can come up with here. I have a couple of ideas already for a kind of a minimal base for it, but we'll see. All right, Alright, so I started doing some of the painting on the kit in order to have certain parts of it stay dark and get highlighted. And what I began with, as I showed in the previous shot, is before I glued these two pieces here onto it, I painted black underneath where those little vents are, and also on the front, to focus there where those little circles are. Come on, focus. Okay. All right, you can see how they're staying dark inside there. I put a German gray over top of it, and I also did that on the fuselage, and then I put a light coating of white over it to give it like a really light gray. And the reason I started with these as well is because I want to put the windows in, and I'm not using the kit ones, but I just cut out some thin styrene which is a little clearer, it looks a little more realistic, and I'm going to glue those on the inside. But before I do that, I'm going to mask over top of these, so when I start painting the rest of the kit, because I have to glue it together to start doing that, it's not going to get any of the windows. And I'm going to do the same thing with the cockpit. So let me show you one other thing. I kind of changed my mind on how I'm going to go as far as putting the different colors of gray. And let me show you what my plan is instead. Alright, so I opened the decal set that came with the kit, and it's really quite excellent. It has a variety of different panels that are lighter, as you can see, and even some other little pieces like this. So it's really quite nice. And as I said at the beginning of this video, I'm not looking to make this as extensive of a build as I did the Discovery. It's really not one of my favorite ships. I like it, and it's one of the 2001's ships, so I definitely wanted to build it. But I'm quite happy with the decals. So what I'll end up doing is, once I get a dark gray on the whole thing, German gray, then I'll just overspray it with some white, which will still give it that grayish look, as you can see. And that'll be a nice base to put the decals on and make it look nicer. I have started working on the photo etch a little bit, and again, I don't want to put a huge amount of time into it. There's the roof of the passenger section. I just painted it white. There's the floor, and I just painted it German gray. And I have the cockpit, a white coat on it right now. So I'll probably add a little bit more colors to those. But you're really not going to see them that well. You only have these little windows here, and then you only have that tiny cockpit. So it's really not going to be that visible. I'm not sure if I even want to do any kind of lights or anything on it. So, alright, so I'm going to let this dry, and then I'll go ahead and get this masked off. Get the window inside, and then I also want to work on the cockpit and the interior. Once I figure out what I'm going to do, I'll get those in place. I'll get the window glued in as well, and the same thing before I seal it all up. I'm going to have to get that glued in place and masked over. That might be a little trickier. So, all right. So I'm working on some ideas, but I already have a pretty good start on it. All right, so we'll just let that dry, and then we'll move on to the next stage of it. All right, so I've done some more work on the Space Clipper, so it's coming along really well. I put a black coat on the inside of this bottom because I'm going to put in the passenger section, and I think I will put one or two little LEDs in there just to light it up a little bit, but nothing major. I also did the same inside of the fuselage. I darkened that with some flat black for the same reason. And I also did the cockpit. It's not glued together yet, but the cockpit has been, the inside of the fuselage has been painted black. So I still have to work on the photo etch to make that that interior. And I began working on this back engine part as I showed in the previous still. I painted it flat black inside, and then before I did that, I just put some Tamiya tape over it, masking tape, and I cut out two shapes that would cover it, except for that little ridge on the center. And once I painted it, I put those over top. So I'm getting ready to glue that inside of the back engine housing. So same thing, so I can get this all painted but leave that black, and then take the masking off when I'm done. One other little thing I did is these two little intake holes are just open gaping holes, but as you can see I put a little, like a rounded piece inside of there to look like it's part of an intake or an engine or something. So so that's all that is, a little piece of gray plastic. And strangely enough, I got it from a leftover piece from a Bandai AT-AT walker from my build where I rusted it up and I didn't use all the legs. So there was a piece that stuck into here and came down, and it's just on a little piece of rounded stock right there, which I cut it off and just glued it inside. And then this one so far, I just glued a piece of UV resistant plastic over it, so it's going to have a little bit of a black outline. It won't be much, but you're not going to see inside there, and that's what I wanted basically. So okay, let me get that other side done, and then I'm going to get this whole thing glued together, and then I'll be ready to start painting this one as well. Okay, so I have the engine fuselage all glued together, and I have those little pieces glued into those intakes right there and masked inside with some black styrene. And the engines are painted black, and right now they're masked over, and that's all glued into place. A little bit of seam work to do right there on the top and on the bottom. I'll let that dry overnight, and then I'll get that sanded and puttied down. I have this little ridged part glued into place, and also this one back here on the top. Alright, so this whole piece is completed for now. Let that dry overnight, and then once I get those seams and everything cleaned up, I'll be ready to get it painted and do like I did with this one, get a German gray on it, and then put a light coat over it. What I'll probably do is glue this piece onto the back of it and have it ready to go. I might just do that now, in fact. And then this whole section, I might just leave it so it's removable. I may have to do something with some magnets so it stays on, but since I'm going to put probably two little SMDs in here to light up the cockpit and the cabin, I'm going to have a battery compartment right here and a little coin battery in the back, so I'll need to be able to access that. And the easiest way will be just to leave this removable. Have this glued onto here, and if it's tight enough, I might be able to just glue some styrene strips on here so it's a little more of a snug fit on the back, and then I can just take it off when needed. Okay, all right. We'll let that dry overnight, and then we'll go ahead and go to the next step. Okay, so I have this seam nice and smooth, and I did a little bit of seam work down below as well, and I got a initial coat of the dark gray onto it, and I still have those back engines masked off, and they're flat black. All right, so for now I'm going to let this set this aside. I started working on a way to try to use magnets to connect it into the fuselage of the kit. Still don't have that perfected yet, but there's a magnet glued onto there and a piece at the bottom that's just connected magnetically. So this will get glued onto the back as well. So I'm kind of working on that. but I'm not going to put any more painting on that just yet. I did this initially so I can get those windows masked off, and I probably still want to do them a little bit lighter, closer to white, before I move ahead with that. Okay. Okay, so I have the passenger cabin glued together, most of it, and I have it painted inside. I have some white on the roof and the walls, and just some German gray on the bottom of the floor. And you can see it has kind of a raised section in the center, and I still have to put on the front door, which I'm going to paint a little darker color, maybe like a light gray, and possibly something over these two panels. We'll see. So I'm figuring out how I'm going to light it. Most likely just put some styrene over the top and frost it, and then just have the lights coming down through the ceiling. That'll be about the easiest way. I decided not to use the chairs that come in the kit. They're all photo etched, and you have to cut them all out. There's a bunch of them, and fold the little teeny tiny edges, so a little bit of a hassle. Let me show you what that looks like. Come on, focus. There we go. So there's one of the chairs. You can see it's hard to get a focus on it, but it's very delicate. So I decided not to go that route. I decided instead to make my own out of styrene. Here was my first attempt. Basic concept, but I didn't like it as much. All I'm going for is the slanted backs of the seat chairs, which is all you're going to see through these little windows in here. So what I did was I used this wider styrene strip as the bottom. I took this thinner styrene strip and cut it in half. As you can see here, some more of it that's cut in two. And then I took some very thin round stock, glued it across the top for like a little headrest, and then just glued both sides. There's a double row of chairs here onto the bottom, and then I took some more of this styrene, cut it off, cut it in two for the seat cushions on the bottom, as you can see. So there we go. So it looks pretty good. Doesn't have to be perfect. It'll just give it some detail inside the cabin there. And then I'm gonna get this paint at the bottom. I'll paint the German gray to match the floor, and I'm thinking about the backs and the headrests. I'm going to do like a blue, and I might lighten it up a bit, we'll see. And on the what is that at? On the cushions themselves, so they stand out a little bit better, I want something lighter. Oh, not this, sorry. It's actually over here. It's a buff, so it's a lighter kind of a tan, which I kind of did on this one here. That's the look. So there's the backs of the chairs, and the headrests are blue, and then kind of a tan on the front. So that'll probably be the same kind of thing I'll go with, either a tan or maybe a brown. We'll see. All right. So I'll let that dry, and then that'll slide right inside there. So I can just slide it right into there, and it'll meet up with that lip. Glue that into place once I get it painted. And then this will be pretty much ready to start putting together. So I'm not going crazy with the detail, but I do want to do something that gives you the idea of some seats. Because if I'm going to light it, which I am, you're going to see something through those windows. So, okay. All right. It's coming along really well. You keep working on this. I have to do one more for the other side as well. All right, to show you a little bit more detail on how this came together, I completed the first one, and I extended that front just a little bit more, as you can see, so that it had a seat cushion as well. So this one's all ready to go, just needs to be painted. So I have the second one working on, and as I showed earlier, I have the cut in half strips. So right now I have the last one, because I have 5 on each one, and I have a little piece of bronze stock glued onto it, which I'm just letting dry, and then I'll snip that off, and then I'll cut that to the right height. So here you can see I have 8 altogether. This is my template, so I just use that to measure against this when I cut that off, so they're all kind of a very close length. I have the floor ready to go, and I used a black felt tip marker to mark off the lines. Now to get this to work, what I did was I lined this up with the windows inside, because that's where you're going to see the cushions, the top. So this line here is really where that cushion is going to end up when it's leaning back. So you can see here, there it is. So the line is not where I glue it onto the bottom. The line, I glue it ahead of it and then have it extended back, and then I just generally get it to line up on that line, as you can see. Alright, so that's what I will do with these. Glue 2 on each side, slightly ahead and leaning back until I get all of these in, and then I'll cut up some more of this, as I said. Do the same thing. Come on, you. Cut it in half, cut a little piece, and just glue it on for the cushion that I have right there, a little flat cushion. All right. So once I get these both done, I will go ahead and start getting them painted, and then I can get them glued into the photo etch. And I did put on some frosted clear styrene. I just sanded it down so that it's a rough surface to it, and you can see inside there. That's how it's going to be lit from the top. All right. Okay, so just about ready to get this piece wrapped up. We'll get that glued inside, and then we can start putting the kit together, and then start working on the painting. Actually, I still got to work on the cockpit. I have it painted. I just have to get some seats for there as well, and a little bit of painting on that. Okay. Alright, so here are the finished passenger seats in there, and I have them painted. I was looking at some of the stills from it. The seats were actually kind of black and dark, so I decided to make them brown with some blue cushions on the back, and I painted the bottom like a light tan, or the deck tan that I showed you, and I did the same on the inside floor, on that raised portion in there, as you can see. Wanted to give it a little bit more light, but also because it looks like it is all kind of a tan color inside. I have the doors in place, and they're kind of a tan. I have some plastic over top of those 2 little openings, which I'm going to kind of make into some displays. So I'll probably paint them like a clear blue and have a little bit of light coming through. So, alright, so the seats are just drying here. I have both sets of them. They're getting ready to go inside. I did have to do one other little bit of detailing. There was a defect on my kit. So this little area right here where you see these ridges on this side, it's supposed to be that way on both sides. But for some reason, mine on the other side was just smooth. So I just glued in some styrene, and you can see some of the paint was affected a little bit by the glue, but I'll let that dry, and then I'll just paint that over again. So, all right. So that was kind of odd. I don't know what happened there. If they had a bad mold or something, that was kind of strange. But I looked at all the stills and everything, and both of them should be the same on either side. So, all right. Let me go ahead and get the seats inside of here and kind of give you an idea of what those are going to look like. All right. So there are the seats inside of the cabin. I don't have any lights on it, obviously. I'm just shining it from a lamp. from the top. So I still have to patch up a few little holes, a few little like edges and seams at the top. And those two little screens in the front, I'm gonna paint those probably a light blue, so there'll be a little bit of light coming through there like their TV screens. So alright, so that's just about completed. You can see the doors there that are kind of a tan color. Alright, so this is just about ready to go. And as soon as I finish up the cockpit, I'll be able to go ahead and get these inside the kit and get it sealed up. Alright, and I just kind of rigged up a little LED in there to put a little bit of light in there to get an idea of what that's going to kind of look like. And it's not permanently positioned, so the seats might not be in the right place, but you can see the little lights in there on the ceiling, which is pretty cool. And you can't see the screens in the front right now, but they're going to be blue when I'm done. So alright, so that's going to be pretty cool when that's completed. Give it just enough light to show that there's some detail in there and a cabin in there. So alright, so this is coming along really well. That cabin is pretty well done. I just have to work on the cockpit, and then I can start getting this put together. So alright, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up for this week, and we'll go ahead and continue working on this, and I will see you next time. And thank you to all my subscribers. Just about ready to hit 500, so thank you very much for everybody. Keep looking in, and stay tuned, and you'll definitely see some more cool things here. All right.